我是曾经身价上亿。
My name is Chen Dongbo. I once had assets worth billions, and am now in debt by 150 million. After 13 years of entrepreneurship, I never imagined that I would be left with 132 debt agreements totaling 150 million, and issues with the salaries of over 100 employees. These are the results of my 13 years of hard work. I am the founder of Guangzhou Mishang Fashion. 2 years ago, it was still a well-known clothing enterprise with an annual output value of over 1 billion. I used to be full of boundless prospects, but now I have become a defaulter who owes debts. I faced immense pressure, countless calls, WeChat inquiries, complaints, and debt collection, which prevented me from truly reflecting on the reasons for my debts. Every day, I could only mechanically explain and explain again. Only when it was quiet at night did the thought of owing so much debt keep me awake. I was unable to eat. I suffered more than anyone else, tormented by all that was happening, feeling endless guilt and sorrow. In the quiet of each late night, I couldn't help but loudly. I lost completely. To all creditors, suppliers, franchisees, colleagues, and family, I'm sorry. I may not be able to repay your debts temporarily, but please believe that I have not chosen to flee. I just need time to get out of this predicament and adjust. Because what I bear on my shoulders is not only the responsibility of supporting the elderly and the young, but also the salaries and futures of hundreds of families. I cannot choose to give up and fall into depravity. I have thought about giving up countless times. I dare not accept reality nor failure. These 2 years have truly been agonizing. When I think of the hundreds of families relying on me, I must stand up. I have endured the pain of spirit and pressure. I have experienced a life that ordinary people have not experienced, seen through what most people have not seen through. I tell myself that I cannot let my life end like this. I will start over and pay off my debts. China's economy is facing great difficulties, with a large number of factories closing down and a significant number of workers becoming unemployed. The export trade outlook is pessimistic. Recent data indicates that Mexico has taken China's place as the largest exporter of goods to the United States. This marks the first time since 2002 that the United States has imported more goods from Mexico than from China. This change reflects the increasingly tense relations between the U.S. and China, as well as a trend toward the U.S. preferring to import goods from countries that are more friendly and closer in proximity. Data released by the U.S. Department of Commerce on February 7th shows that the value of goods imported from Mexico to the U.S. grew by nearly 5% between 2022 and 2023, reaching $475 billion US. Meanwhile, imports from China to the U.S. decreased by 20%, dropping to $427 billion. U.S. consumers and businesses are also turning to Europe, South Korea, India, Canada, and Vietnam for automotive parts, footwear, toys, and raw materials. Additionally, the total trade deficit of goods and services in the U.S. shrank by 18.7%. Despite global economic weakness and a strong U.S. dollar, overall U.S. exports to the world in 2023 saw a slight increase compared to 2022. Moreover, due to Americans' reduced demand for crude oil and chemicals, the sale of consumer goods such as phones, clothes, camping equipment, toys, and furniture has also declined, leading to a year-on-year decrease in U.S. imports. Regarding the decline in U.S. imports from China, Derek Scissors, a China expert at the American Enterprise Institute, pointed out that the categories with the largest decrease in imports from China to the U.S. include computers, electronics, chemicals, and pharmaceuticals, all of which are politically sensitive. Scissors told U.S. News and World Report, "I don't see the U.S. being comfortable with a rebound in those areas in 2024 and 25, predicting that the China-Mexico reversal on imports to the United States is likely not a one-year blip." Scissors believes that the decrease in U.S. dependence on Chinese goods reflects American vigilance towards the economic policies of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. In 2022, Xi Jinping's stringent zero-COVID policy led to stagnation in the Chinese economy. Chinese officials conducted raids on foreign companies in apparent espionage investigations. Scissors said, "I think it's corporate America belatedly deciding Xi Jinping is unreliable." In fact, in recent years, differences between the US and China have deepened on issues such as trade, the Taiwan Strait, the South China Sea, and human rights. The CCP's aggressive military actions in the Taiwan Strait and South China Sea have intensified regional tensions, leading to a sharp deterioration in US-China relations in military, diplomatic, and economic spheres. Meanwhile, the Trump administration believed that China trade practices violated global trade rules and began imposing tariffs on Chinese imports in 2018. After President Biden took office in 2021, he continued to retain those tariffs and explicitly stated that confrontation with the CCP is a rare consensus between Democrats and Republicans. Subsequently, in 2022, the Biden administration began pushing the friendshoring policy, urging American companies to seek suppliers in allied countries, aiming to shift supply chains back to the U.S. or friendly countries, thereby replacing the long-standing practice of U.S. companies transferring production to China and competing with and countering the CCP. Friendshoring is a diplomatic and trade policy implemented by the United States, which requires companies to withdraw from countries with geopolitical conflicts with the U.S., prioritize trade relations with allies or countries with similar values, and establish mutually supportive supply chains. Supply chain disruptions associated with the COVID-19 pandemic have also led companies to seek suppliers closer to home. Therefore, Mexico has benefited as U.S. companies seek to reduce their dependence on Chinese factories. In fact, in 2023, despite 10 years of economic growth in the U.S. and increasing imports from other parts of the world, quarterly imports from China to the U.S. remained roughly at the same level as 10 years ago. The New York Times reported that geopolitical risks are evidently driving U.S. companies to shift towards other markets, especially those with low manufacturing costs and stable trade relations with the U.S., such as Mexico. Jesus Carmona, zone president of Mexico and Central America for Schneider Electric, stated that factors such as the climate law passed by the Biden administration in 2022 and geopolitical tensions sparked by the Russia-Ukraine war have pushed companies to turn to Mexico. Carmona pointed out that during the Russia-Ukraine war, China seemed to be siding with Russia. People began to realize that we could no longer rely so heavily on China. The dependence pattern of the past 40 years has turned China into the world's factory. Schneider Electric already has a large business presence in Mexico, with 9 factories and nearly 12,000 employees. In 2021, it decided to further develop in Mexico. With the construction of new production bases and the expansion of existing factories, Schneider Electric currently has approximately 16,000 employees in Mexico and plans to increase this number to around 20,000 soon. Approximately 75% to 80% of the products that Schneider manufactures in Mexico are sold to the U.S., including a range of products such as circuit breakers and panels used for power distribution and regulation. Additionally, the trade deficit of the United States with countries such as Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands reached a historic high, and the trade deficit with Mexico, South Korea, Taiwan, and India also set new records. This highlights that under the influence of geopolitical tensions, rising tariffs, and supply chain issues, the global trade pattern is undergoing changes, and global manufacturing production is being reshuffled. Financial columnist Zi from the Epoch Times that Mexico has become the leader in trade with the United States, which is attributed to the CCP's lack of credibility and continuous human rights violations. The CCP's long-standing argument to Western societies is that economics should not be mixed with politics. But this argument is no longer effective today. Since the Trump administration, the United States has actively worked to reduce its dependence on China. This move stems from the fact that the global community can no longer accept the CCP's actions domestically and abroad, as the values of the two sides are completely divergent. Tsai cited examples such as the Hong Kong protests during the Trump administration and the global spread of the COVID-19 virus, which made Americans vividly aware of the ugliness of the CCP. During the Biden administration, events such as Russia's invasion of Ukraine, spy balloons, and conflicts in the Middle East have all been linked to the CCP, with Beijing even recently openly hosting the Taliban. Tsai pointed out that in recent years, the CCP's misdeeds have become increasingly apparent, and countries such as Europe, the United States, Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and India have gradually begun to confront it. Even Brendan Kavanagh, a musician in London, began to use music to uphold justice after having been harassed by Chinese nationalists. As he researched the CCP, he discovered a wealth of information about its human rights violations. After realizing the evil of the CCP, he began to use music to defend justice. On the other hand, due to reduced demand from abroad and rising interest rates, Chinese exporters are facing the long-term threat of factory deflation, with these exporters being forced into brutal price wars due to shrinking business. According to Reuters, Mr. Lin, the owner of a Chinese lighting factory, recently received the first order of the year from an existing overseas customer who indicated that they were willing to pay only $1.5 million, a 25% reduction compared to the price of the same order in previous years. Therefore, he faced a difficult choice, either accept the order at a loss or tell the workers not to come back to work after the Chinese New Year. Lin said he can't give up this order. He plans to restart his factory in Taizhou City, Zhejiang Province, after the holiday period from February 10th to the 17th. He said, "I may lose this customer forever, which will jeopardize many people's livelihoods. If we postpone resuming production, people may start to doubt our business. If the news spreads, it will affect our suppliers' decisions." Squeezed profits are quite common in the Chinese export industry. According to data from the Chinese Ministry of Commerce in 2022, about 180 million people are engaged in work related to foreign exports. Moreover, in December last year, the Producer Price Index, PPI, fell by 2.7% year-on-year, marking the 15th consecutive month of decline. Shrinking profit margins are putting industrial output and employment at risk and exacerbating China's economic woes, including the real estate crisis and debt tightening. The PPI is used to measure the average change in the prices received by producers for their goods and services. It is one of the several price indices collected and compiled by statistical agencies, and it is highly sensitive to the market. If the PPI is higher than the expected value, it indicates the risk of inflation. If it is lower than the expected value, it indicates the risk of deflation. The main purpose of the PPI is to measure the price changes of various goods at different stages of production.
Hi, this is Raymond Young from ANZ Research.
Raymond Young, chief China economist at ANZ Bank, stated that addressing deflation should be a more important policy priority than achieving the expected growth target of around 5% this year. He said, companies reduce product prices, then reduce employee wages. Then consumers won't buy. This could be a vicious cycle. Unlike inflation, deflation is characterized by sustained declines in the prices of goods and services. Although falling prices may seem beneficial for increasing purchasing power, they can lead to consumers delaying consumption, thereby threatening the economy. Weak demand may force companies to reduce production, freeze hiring, and accept further price cuts to clear inventory, resulting in reduced profitability, even if costs remain unchanged. Analysts believe that China's economy is at risk of prolonged deflation. Alicia Garcia Herrero, adjunct professor at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, told the BBC, "It is worrisome as far as it shows that demand in China is poor while the rest of the world is awakening, especially the West. Deflation will not help China. Debt will become more heavy. All of this is not good news." Additionally, in 2023, profits of Chinese industrial enterprises fell by 2.3%, following a 4% decline in 2022 due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Official Chinese government surveys showed that manufacturing activity in January this year contracted for the fourth consecutive month, with export orders shrinking for the 10th consecutive month. Analysts say that exports mean policymakers need to resort to other measures to achieve growth targets, increasing the urgency of stimulating household consumption. Standard & Poor's chief economist for the Asia-Pacific region, Luis Kaus, stated that the sooner the issue of economic growth is addressed, the quicker downward pressure on prices and profit margins will dissipate. However, China has consistently been channeling financial resources into manufacturing rather than consumers, exacerbating concerns about overcapacity and deflationary pressures, even in high-end industries like electric vehicles. According to Reuters, a senior executive at an automotive mold factory in eastern Zhejiang province expects the company's production and exports to increase, but profits will decline. He described the intensifying industry competition as cannibalization. As the People's Bank of China releases liquidity into the financial system to stimulate economic growth, banks are providing cheap loans to factories. However, smaller businesses are reluctant to take out loans due to being squeezed out by larger competitors, which economists consider a growing inefficiency in China's monetary policy. According to CCP officials, private enterprise investment provides 80% of urban employment opportunities, but last year, this investment decreased by 0.4%, while government investment increased by 6.4%. Miao Yujie, a Chinese clothing exporter, said that many bank managers sound desperate when they call him, unable to lend money. Even after reducing his workforce to about 20 employees last year, he couldn't turn a profit because larger companies squeezed him out of the market. He stated, "But you only need a loan when you want to expand." He also added that he is considering closing his company. In recent years, various industries in China, including real estate, finance, internet technology, education, healthcare, and gaming, have witnessed phenomena such as salary cuts, layoffs, unemployment, and bankruptcy. Meanwhile, on the internet, there have been continuous reports of labor rights activism, including wage protests, property disputes, and protests against layoffs. According to the Hong Kong-based NGO China Labor Bulletin, from July 1, 2023 to January 22, 2024, there were a total of 1,199 incidents of workers' protests involving both enterprise employees and migrant workers in mainland China, mainly in the construction and manufacturing industries. Some factory owners expressed significant pressure to lay off workers, even though some are unwilling to do so. Yangbing Ben's factory, which produces industrial valves, province considered closing down, but it continues to operate because he feels indebted to his workers, many of whom are nearing retirement age. However, he's uncertain how much longer the factory can survive. He said this year will be the best year of the next decade.